This is where paddle tennis happens.
When people ask me what paddle tennis is, I ask them back if they know where Venice Beach is. For me, it all started here at the courts in Venice, next to the famous Muscle Beach Gym and basketball courts, made popular by the movie White Men Can't Jump.
Watch her hit some.
I started playing paddle tennis in 1967. I'll never forget it. I called my uncle who played the game. His name was Rowley Brothers, and he always told me about this game that he played. He just loved paddle tennis. And I never thought much about it. And one day it just came to me, I'm going to call him. So I called him up on the phone. I said, Uncle Rowley, come pick me up and take me down to the paddle tennis courts. There were 4 courts in Santa Monica. And I remember hitting the first ball with this little paddle, and I fell in love with the game, and I've played ever since, so it's been like 46 years. And then I ran the tournaments in Venice for years, and so everybody would say, Mr. Paddle Tennis, and of course I got involved with the promotion of it and the organization, and I was addicted to paddle tennis. I had to play. I just loved it. If it rained, it was just a disaster. I remember one day it rained at noon, and I said, why didn't we play earlier? You know, the game is just a wonderful, fun game. Anybody can play it. Underhand serve makes it easy. The court is not that big, but to get to be really good, then you have to practice and perfect your game. And then you're challenged a little bit, and you actually get a little frustrated. And then you overcome that. And then you start moving up, and your game gets better. And then you play in a tournament, and then maybe someone will show you what you're doing wrong. You watch the better players, and it's got a tremendous camaraderie. Like I said, it's like a second family to many, many people.
Mold their stroke so that you create what's called muscle memory. Until you have muscle memory and proper technique, you have nothing.
It was invented by a man named Reverend Beale. He was a reverend, and his last name was Beale. Well, anyway, he took a tennis court and he divided it into 4 different courts. He actually invented it in Michigan, but he introduced it to the streets of New York. And he introduced it as a children's game. And it was a smaller court, and they played. And then they built courts around in different locations like Brighton Beach. I think there were 24 courts. They had thousands of people that belonged to this club, and they all played, lots of them played paddle tennis. And they played a different game. It was paddle tennis, but they played with a live ball. What we do is we take a hypodermic needle now, and we puncture the tennis ball, and it lets some of the air out, and we have better rallies, and it makes it a better game. We got together on all the rules, but there's one rule, and it's called the bucket rule. And it's a line 12 feet back from the net. When you serve the ball, you can't put your foot over the line or come down until the other opponent hits the ball. Well, in the East, they don't have the bucket. So some people like the bucket, some people like the no bucket. So in California right now, most of the really top players play without the bucket because they used to argue. They would say, oh, you bucketed, you went in, you were too early. Well, now without the bucket, there's no arguing. But most of the people on the West Coast like the bucket. On the East Coast, they play without the bucket. So when we play a tournament in New York or the Carolinas or Virginia or Florida, we play without the bucket. In California, we play some tournaments with the bucket, some without the bucket. Some divisions play without, some of the lower ones play with the bucket.
The game of paddle tennis grew in popularity. Numerous tournaments were held, notably in Los Angeles.
We made it to the finals of the top division, and it was like one of the most wonderful moments of my life. He looked at me, and I looked at him. We started laughing, like, what are we doing here? Then, around 1989, 1990, we started having the pro celebrity tournaments, and that was awesome. So a lot of these stars said, well, we'll play in your paddle tennis tournament. We don't know how to play paddle tennis. I said, don't worry about it. We'll teach you how to play. So we had a wonderful time. There was Don Johns, Melanie Griffith, Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, became my friend. And we taught him how to play. Fred Willard, it goes on. Farrah Fawcett used to play. I knew her before she was even in commercials. And when I was in New York, I met a gentleman named Jack Driscoll, Billy Angiolfi, and Larry Lynch. This is back in 1979. And they were putting on a tournament in Florida. I think it was called United States National Beach Paddle Tennis Championships. In those days, it had only been going for like 5 or 6 years. So I flew down to Florida, in St. Augustine, Florida, with my partner Chip Selt. We were the first Californians to play in the tournament. And they played on the beach, and you had to get used to this bounce. Was a little bit different. It's like playing on clay. But we had all sorts of nets on the court, on the beach, and many, many courts. And the whole town would come out. And they had a luau. And the party was almost as big as the tournament. It was headlines in the paper. It was a big thing here then in St. Augustine. People from New York came, people from Florida, and people from California. Since then, it's expanded. People in Virginia, Pennsylvania, the Carolinas, and it's really grown.
St. Augustine, more commonly called the nation's oldest city, is known for its Spanish colonial-era buildings and historic houses. St. Augustine Beach is a gem along Florida's Atlantic coastline, with miles and miles of beautiful beaches. The National Championship in St. Augustine Beach, Florida, is the biggest paddle tennis tournament held on the beach every year.
The way paddle tennis got started in Florida was kind of funny. There was this wonderful man named Buddy Davis. And Buddy Davis would take a net down to the beach. And they would draw the lines, and they would just come and play. And they invited anybody to come and play. And then they got 2 nets and 3 nets. So one day, I think it was about 1972 or 73, they had a tournament. A little fun tournament, no big deal. Well, Buddy Davis had quite a sense of humor. And what he did, he published it in some paper in Tennessee as the World Paddle Tennis Championship. Well, Murray Geller, head of the Paddle Tennis Association, United States Paddle Tennis Association, he heard about it, and he went berserk. He said, what are they doing? So he flew down, they all became friends, and he told them the proper rules, and the nationals grew out of that. And then that's when I came in 79, and then I told people in California, and more and more and more. This year in 2014, we had 22 people from California come out and play in the tournament. Now we drill a hole and we stick the pole in the ground. Yeah. Well, before we took tires, we put cement in the tires, and then we put the pole in the cement and let it dry. They were called standards. We rolled them out, okay, with a pole up, put 2, and put a net between them.
The National Championship in St. Augustine attracts players of different ages and backgrounds, from young players of 15 years old to veterans of paddle tennis, players from the West Coast and the East, Spain, Peru, tennis professionals, and those who just started playing paddle tennis.
I come from Spain, played tennis all my life, and I played padel, and I picked up paddle tennis about a couple of years ago. And I'm just loving being out here on the beach, enjoying the tournament. I think for me the best padel and paddle tennis is that you play with a foam racket, shorter paddle. It's a faster game, and with that paddle, it's a lot easier on your body. You don't get like I used to play tennis, and I would get like shoulder injuries, and it's a lot more demanding physically. Here you can have a fun game within 20 minutes of you pick up a paddle, and you're addicted automatically into a fun game.
Well, basketball, of course, is my sport, and it's what fueled me for so many years in my life. But right now, I'd have to say I'm enjoying paddle tennis a little bit more. I love being outside and playing basketball. I was inside in a gym for so many years, so now being outside in the sun and meeting a whole new group of people is something that I've really enjoyed. It enables me to jump, but no, I think basketball just the competitiveness of basketball. I feel it out on the court, even though it's something completely different. That will to win and that competitive nature, playing for so many years at a very high level on the basketball court, I think has transitioned me over here to still have that killer instinct. The game today was good. The first set we won 6-1, and then they came back and definitely challenged us and won 3-6. And we had to regroup and get focused. And then the third set, thankfully, we were able to pull it out, and we won 6-3 to move on.
There is no other sport like paddle tennis, where you can watch a father and son playing together in the national doubles tournament.
We were down a set. It was tough to come back, but we did it, and the win's always tough.
How was playing with your dad?
It's a great experience every time. It's really fun. We play really good together.
Sonia Odalucci came to New York from the Dominican Republic. She has won 9 national doubles championships. She organizes fundraising paddle tennis tournaments to benefit the Breast Cancer Research Foundation.
I love paddle tennis, and I play every day in Venice Beach, court number 4. You'll find me anytime after 10. I'm there in Venice Beach, playing and promoting. Paddle tennis in Venice Beach is number 1. The secret for winning is to stay in shape, because you're actually playing against the element, and it's stay in shape and drink a lot of water and stay hydrated. And it's just come out here and have fun.
The elements are brutal because the bounces aren't even, the courts are very close to each other. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of wind, the nets are sagging.
You have to fight. My partner, I'm actually cramping up a little bit. My partner's like, hey, do you want to be done? I said, no, we're winning this match. We're for sure winning this match. Like, we're going to fight hard. Unless I have a broken bone or I'm bleeding or pass out, we're playing this match. You know, even if I have to limp, we're going to fight. You might have to help pick me up a little bit, and it's a team. You know, it's doubles.
Beach paddle tennis is a serious sport that draws the same crowds as those who flock to the beach to view volleyball tournaments. The beach chairs are lined up along the sides of the courts, where spectators watch the game in the sea breeze. Playing on the beach is likened to playing on clay. The ball is slow, and there are many irregular bounces, so-called beach bounce, when the ball bounces and dies fast. Also, the beach players follow the no bucket rule.
In 1979, I went back with a person by the name of Chip Zelt, and we played in the national championships. And that was quite an experience at Stuyvesant Town. And we played against Saul Hopman and Jeff Flightman, who dominated paddle tennis for over a decade. They were like the Brooklyn Wall, we used to call them. They were incredible. They were unbelievably good.
Though paddle tennis has remained more popular on the West Coast, its roots go back to New York City, with the first paddle tennis tournament held in New York in 1922. Today, there are paddle tennis courts nestled in Stuyvesant Town in Manhattan, on 14th Street between Avenues A and B, and on 20th Street.
They're still playing in New York at Stuyvesant Town. There's a group, Steve Farhood, I played with him 30 years ago. He's still playing.
Since college, you've been a fan of boxing, and now you're a boxing analyst.
Right.
So, how did you get involved into paddle tennis?
Well, if you live in this development, and there are 110 buildings here and about 30,000 people, you see the courts. I mean, they're right outside where I live in Peter Cooper Village. When I was growing up, there were 3 different playgrounds. This one, Playground 5, where we're in now, Peter Cooper Village, where I play, and then one other one which no longer has paddle tennis courts. So you saw this game, and if you come from somewhere else, you go, what is this game? You know, it's not familiar like tennis is. So it's free, but in those days when I was a kid growing up here, and I've lived here for more than 40 years, you had to bring your own nets.
Oh, wow.
The nets were not permanent, and the poles were lying around in the corner of the playground. So you get the poles, you stick them in, you tie the net that you have to bring, and you play. The game started in New York. First courts, I guess, that were popular and used a lot were in Brooklyn. And Brighton Beach used to have the Brighton Beach Baths, which was this huge, huge development right off the ocean, where a lot of kids grew up and they would go all day, and their parents knew where they were safe, and paddle tennis was among the activities there. So they would play there. And this development, Peter Cooper Stuyvesant Town, which is almost 70 years old now, was opened in about 1946. From the beginning, had paddle tennis courts. And certain other places in Brooklyn had courts, but the game never really grew that much where there were widespread courts. It was always centered here, Brooklyn, and then eventually, of course, California and Florida and South Carolina as well.
Is there any competition going on between West and East Coast as far as paddle tennis tournaments, or it's more just a big family and everybody knows each other?
Back then there was more of a rivalry that for the national tournament, the big California teams would come here and play against Sal and Jeff, the Great Wall of Brooklyn. Now, I think if you compare the games in California, Southern California, and New York, there's really no comparison. We know who the good players are in New York. We have some very good players who could play there. But we have maybe 10 to 15 really good players, where they probably have 100 to 150 really good players. Yeah. Well, the Florida tournament, I went to that tournament 1979 for the first time, a long time. That tournament is a very old tournament.
Like 40 years now.
Yeah, had a lot of fun. I went twice. And that is an interesting tournament because you get California coming and you get some of New York, some of our better players, Mitch Kuttner, Ryan Bucco, they come every year. So you get a little bit of competition there between the East and the West on a neutral site, playing on the beach. One of the dreams I have, and I've talked with a few of the California people about this, they would like nothing better than to come here for a big tournament. The problem is, one of the problems is, this is a private community. So we can't do what we want here as players. We have to get approval. You know, we're somewhat limited here because once October comes, then you have issues with the light and you have issues with the temperature. You know, so we kind of play from, I guess, April to October. It's only half the year, where in other places like California and Florida, obviously they have the luxury of year-round.
Can you recall any special moments at the tournament when people maybe were fighting over the score?
One moment that I remember, again, right here in this playground, I told you about Sal and Jeff, you know, the Great Wall of Brooklyn. They were playing this team from California, who was the best team from California, Brian Lee and Greg Lawrence, and they were fantastic players. Brian Lee's father came from California with his son and was sitting on a bench watching. And whenever Sal and Jeff would hit a lob or anything, he would yell, before the point is over, out, to tell his son and his partner not to hit the ball. So Sal got very upset by this, and at one point when he yelled out, Sal just dropped his paddle and ran at the guy like he wanted to rip his head off. That caused, of course, a big fight, and it was mayhem, and we didn't regain control of the match until for about 20 minutes or so. So that was pretty memorable. The other moment, not sure if it was here or the other playground, there was a match, again, New Yorkers against Californians. There was no tiebreaker for the last set. That was the rule. And as you know, when paddle tennis is played at a high level, it's very difficult to break serve. The fifth set, the final score was 38-36 in games. So it was like that match at Wimbledon with Isner and I forget the opponent's name, where they played so many games, 70-something to 68. Well, the final score was 38-36, I think, and it was like a 5-6 hour match. And people were falling asleep, and they wanted to eat, and the players were exhausted. And it was a semifinal of a national tournament, and needless to say, the team that won had nothing left for the finals, and they got blown out.
You know, it takes a lot of power, willpower, in boxing to get up and fight back. You know, so in paddle tennis, do you think it might be a sport with a serious competition, or it's more of a social aspect to the sport, like more of a fun game to play for all ages?
It's fun for all ages. It's fun for us, but we're competitive. If we weren't competitive, we probably wouldn't be playing a game like this. You can go to the gym and get on the treadmill or lift weights, which is not really competitive. But I know for myself, nothing feeds my need for competition like playing against someone. So even though we all have a nice time and, okay, it's your turn to play, okay, now I'll play, once you're on that court, you want to win. And the higher level you go, much higher than my level, but when you go to the highest level, there's a burning desire to win. And the difference in this game, at doubles, from winning and losing is so narrow. Very often it's a ball hitting a net and dribbling over, or one serve, whatever it is, that you really have to stay very focused. It's a pretty tough game, and it's also a physical game in that the court is small in doubles, and if you and I are partners, well, that other team isn't trying to hit the ball past us, they're trying to hit the ball through us. It's almost okay to hit at someone.
What's your vision of paddle tennis in, like, let's say 5-10 years?
Well, I would love to see the sport grow. I think there's more competition now for racket sports than there's been in a long time, because you have what they call pickleball now, and you have padel, which is huge in Spain and South America, which is a fun sport. You could never have this sport grow without building more courts. To build more courts, and I don't mean private courts, I don't mean if you have a nice house in the suburbs, you build a court so that you and your friends can play. That's not going to spread the game. You need public courts, you need courts at schools, and that's not that easy. That costs money, and that costs, that you need people who are willing to give the space for that. So I don't see a big growth in the sport as much fun as it is. I think it's always going to be a big sport in California, Southern California. It'll have its little niche in New York. I hope it grows, but I don't see a lot of growth in the next few years necessarily.
What's the secret for winning?
Wow. Technique helps. You, with a tennis background, you are at an advantage over me without a tennis background. Even though I played tennis, I was never taught tennis. So if you have good strokes, that helps. But you have to have quick reflexes, and you have to be able to hit an overhead. And again, you have to be mentally tough, I think, because the difference between winning and losing is so narrow. Even if I'm a lot better than you and we play doubles, I'm probably only going to win by one break, right? You don't see many 6-1 sets, 6-love sets. So there's not that much of a difference between winning and losing, and I think the focus has to be there. And I think that's what makes a good player.
What is the secret to winning?
Practice. A lot of practice. Well, for me, it's not hitting the ball as hard.
The secret is staying hydrated. Hydrated, hydrated.
If you want to win paddle tennis, number one is you have to hit the ball in. And what do I mean by that? Play steady, but play aggressive. You have to serve the ball, do a good serve, and then start moving into the net. He who controls the net controls the set. You have to be on your toes. You have to be able to move left, right, forward, and backwards. You don't see a football player on the line just standing straight up. Too many people are flat-footed, straight up, and they don't play. Number three, they've got to think. People do not think when they're out there. They just hit the ball. If your opponent's at the net on one side and he's ready with his forehand and his partner is way back, who would you hit it to? You hit it to the person way back. The other thing is not to get into a pattern. I've beaten people just by outthinking them. They return the ball to the same place. I know where it's going, so I run in and I put it away. Well, if I ran in and they lobbed me a few times, I would come in slower and they would throw me off. Blast the ball every once in a while. Dink, lob, have a mixture of different shots. That's one of the secrets. You have to keep your eye on the ball. Biggest rookie error is taking your eye off the ball. Know your opponent. What's their weakness? Hit it to the weakness. If they have trouble being able to dink them. If they have a weak overhead, a bad shoulder, lob them. To break their concentration, you might ask them a question. Say they're on a roll. You take a little bit longer to change sides. When you're changing sides, you talk to them. You ask a question. What's the score? That's another trick. You know what the score is. They start thinking about the score, they forget about what they're doing. So there's a million little tricks. But basically, to play better, you need to practice. And for goodness sake, just have fun. Be relaxed. Don't get so uptight. You know, the whole world's in a big mess. People are dying. There's all sorts of things going around the world. If you don't win a little paddle tennis match, it's not the end of the world. So have fun, enjoy it, do your best, get to the net, play your hardest.
Daniel Coyle, the author of the book called Talent Code, visited few unknown places like a tennis court in Moscow and a soccer field in Brazil that produced a huge amount of talent. He was fascinated by the supernatural skills of Brazilian soccer players, but the game he saw resembled a soccer game played inside a phone booth. The ball was half the size, and it hardly bounced at all. The players trained on a basketball court size, and the game consisted of non-stop action. The game was called futsal, or Portuguese for soccer in the room. Futsal players touch the ball far more often than soccer players, and the game is all about looking for angles and controlling the ball. No time plus no space equals better skills. In this sense, paddle tennis is like a futsal of tennis.
If you're a paddle tennis player or a tennis player for that matter, this could make your strokes better. Your volley's going to be crisper. Your ground strokes are going to be firmer. and you're going to be able to just understand the fast pace of paddle tennis and then enjoy tennis that much more. So when you're in Venice, come check us out. Anyone can play, the courts are free, and we'd love to see you.
But the best thing is just picking up that paddle Saturday morning, heading down to the courts, seeing your buddies, playing and laughing. There's been so many people over the years that I've met and everybody has met. And it makes me so grateful for the people, Murray Geller and the ones that pioneered the sport years ago. They pass the baton on to generation after generation now, and we're trying to get more people in that will spread the sport, spread the word, so more people can enjoy it. We've taken some people from New York, from Florida and California, and we have a ceremony. It's right there in Court 4 where all the magic was before. And the people come and they haven't played, some of them for 30 years, and they see each other, and tears are coming down their face from the emotion, and the memories are coming back of all the experiences that we used to have. Now, some people may play paddle tennis for 6 months or a year, and maybe that's all it was, but that was part of their life. Other people play all of their life, but it played an part in their life, and when they come back and they think about that, it was like the good old days. And I tell people who are playing now, you're going to look back. These are the good old days. These are wonderful times for paddle tennis. The courts aren't too crowded, but there's still great players of all levels to play at the courts. If you ever get in Venice Beach, walk along the walkway and see it being played. You know, come down to St. Augustine, Florida. They have courts if you're nearby. Hopefully one day it will be everywhere.